What's the hardest thing about writing? Well, it's getting started. Maybe you're having a hard time coming up with a story idea, or you're stuck on where to take your story next. If you want a way into a story or a way through, I have 9 story starters to help you. This free PDF is full of story seeds and prompts to get you going. To download your 9 story starters, go to nancypanuccio.com/start. That's Nancy with an I, Panuccio with 2 C's, nancypanuccio.com/start. So there's something the reader hooks into that refuses to let him go. Now, you've heard of the hook. It's a literary technique in the opening of a story that hooks the reader's attention so that he'll keep on reading. Now, ideally, it's the opening sentence or paragraph in your book, because that's often all a reader will give you before they decide to invest money or time into your book. So you want to make that introduction, the first paragraph, as enticing and irresistible as possible. Writer Unleashed is for you, a writer who has a story you want to bring onto the page and into the hearts and minds of readers. I'm Nancy Panuccio, writer, editor, and writing coach. And each week, we'll explore techniques, mindsets, and inspiration for writing stories readers can't put down. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let's begin. How do you write a great introduction for your story? An opening that draws the reader in, establishes the voice of your main character, and whets your reader's appetite for more. The first reader you want to entice is a prospective agent. And if that's a go, the next in line is the acquisitions editor at a publishing house. And finally, it's the person who buys the book either on Amazon or in the bookstore. But a particular novel or memoir has to feel like a necessity in order for someone to buy it or to invest time and energy in it. So the final reader you want to capture is the one who will pay to read your book. Think about the way you choose a book. You might look at the back jacket cover and read the blurb. And if that sounds interesting, you'll read the first few sentences. And if that's going well, you might read the first few paragraphs. And that's where the buying and reading decisions are made. And many books are rejected on the basis of their opening. So readers, whether it's an agent or a publisher or the person who opens your book looking for something to take home, they're likely going to make the decision to keep reading or not based on your opening paragraph. So you'll need to capture your reader in the first few sentences or paragraphs, if not the first line. So what are readers really looking for? Well, most readers, your buying audience, are not consciously looking for anything, but there are some things they're wired to respond to. They're wired to connect, to see some reflection of themselves in your character or their situation. They're wired for that dopamine rush that comes with expectation and curiosity. They like surprise. So you want to make that initial introduction to your story as enticing as possible. So what is it that seduces the reader in the first opening lines? It's usually a character we want to learn more about or a compelling situation. Sometimes we're just entranced by the writer's voice. For me, what makes me want to take a book home is that it tells me just enough to make me think, tell me more. So a book can open in summary or dialogue, it can open with action or description, but it's the way it's written, it's the way it's orchestrated. It's a combination of elements that make it irresistible. So there's something the reader hooks into that refuses to let him go. Now, you've heard of the hook. It's a literary technique in the opening of a story that hooks the reader's attention so that he'll keep on reading. Now, ideally, it's the opening sentence or paragraph in your book, because that's often all a reader will give you before they decide to invest money or time into your book. So you want to make that introduction, the first paragraph, as enticing and irresistible as possible. So in this episode, we're going to talk about how to hook your reader's attention in your first paragraph. It's important real estate because that's often the only chance you get. But this can be misleading because often writers are instructed to craft the hook as close to the beginning as possible. But sometimes this results in writers leading with something explosive in the first paragraph. Someone is found dead in an alley, or a bomb is about to go off. Now, that may be okay if you're writing a thriller, but we're not talking about thrillers here. We're talking about fiction. We're talking about memoir. We're talking about orchestrating the reader's experience and keeping them glued to your pages. We want to start with something dramatic, but not melodramatic. We don't want to start off with some big bang before we've met the characters and developed an appetite for the situation they're in. I like what Sol Stein says, that it's better to show your characters acting in a situation that's slowly alarming. So there's a conflict brewing into a big event that will hold the reader curious, concerned, maybe enthralled, or gripped. So a hook captures the reader's attention and piques their interest. It's that first sentence or that first paragraph. A hook is something that's bold or surprising or intriguing, or it conveys a human experience. So let's get to it. Let's break down 4 different types of story openings and why they work. Hook number 1, the defining event. Here's an example from Annie Ernaux's memoir, Shame. My father tried to kill my mother one Sunday afternoon in June. So as an opening sentence, this is very provocative. This goes straight to an afternoon in this narrator's life when everything she thought was true about her life was blown apart, dismantled. It's a defining moment in how she understands the way the world operates. So she launches the story right at that moment of then, when life as she knew it changed forever and changed who she was. So it's provocative. We can't ignore it. So having told us the defining event up front, she then backtracks to tell us the events of that day, what happened that led up to this traumatic moment that changed her. I had been to Mass at 11:45 as usual. I must have brought back some cakes from the baker in the new shopping precinct, a cluster of temporary buildings erected after the war while reconstruction was underway. Okay, so here she's giving us the context of where in time this story takes place. And then she talks about how she came home and changed out of her Sunday clothes into a dress, had lunch with her parents. She describes her mother being in a bad mood and the fight that ensued between her parents. And then she gets to the moment that scarred her for life. In the poorly lit cellar, my father had grabbed my mother by the shoulders or maybe the neck. In his other hand, he was holding the scythe for cutting firewood, which he had wrenched away from the block where it belonged. At this point, all I can remember are sobs and screams. Then the three of us are back in the kitchen again. My father is sitting by the window. My mother is standing near the cooker, and I am crouching at the foot of the stairs. I can't stop crying. My father wasn't his normal self. His hands were still trembling, and he had that unfamiliar voice. He kept on repeating, "Why are you crying? I didn't do anything to you." I can recall saying this sentence, "You'll breathe disaster on me." My mother was saying, "Come on, it's over." Afterward, the three of us went for a bicycle ride in the countryside nearby. When they got back, my parents opened the cafe like they did every Sunday evening. That was the end of it. So we know this is not the end of it for this narrator. We know from the beginning that the rest of the story will be an attempt to understand and process how this particular afternoon affected her. But notice she didn't start at the beginning of that day. She led with the traumatic defining event and then backed up to tell us what we're dying to know. What happened to cause her father to try to kill her mother and how he tried to kill her. So she spends the rest of the memoir unwrapping how that defining event shaped her. Now, as the author, you need to understand what your character's life was like the day before this defining moment. This may make it into your story by way of flashback or backstory, but you want to get a clear picture of where your character was, what your character believed to be true, and who they were, where they were, the day before this defining moment happened. So it's significant. It starts in the aftermath of the significant event, and then the narrator is telling the story from the perspective of having survived it. Here's another defining event from the story My Romance by Douglas Glover. This is the first paragraph. Our boy Nettie died when he was 3 months old. I hardly remember any of this except for the brief hours following his birth when we were a normal, happy couple, and then afterwards when Annie would wake in the night, choked with sobs, her milk seeping through the cloth of her nightgown. The baby's hungry, he needs to eat, she would whisper, then curl into a tight, convulsive ball, a spasm of despair. So there's this before and after. We know that this defining moment changes everything. It changes their world. It changes their relationship. Now, this is summary. It's very specific, though, so the details give necessary life to the summary. You probably didn't even notice that it was summary. But by now, we already have some expectations brewing. We expect that this tragedy is going to lead to some kind of trouble in the marriage, even some kind of fracture. And we want to know how this couple survives this unimaginable loss. So, opening number 1, a single defining event. This is very effective when you're writing about trauma. So it's the moment of impact, and then the rest of the story tries to make sense of what it all meant and what kind of meaning can be derived from that earlier upheaval. Okay, hook number 2, dialogue. Here's an excerpt from In the Cemetery Where Al Jolson is Buried by Amy Hempel. Tell me things I won't mind forgetting, she said. Make it useless stuff or skip it. So already we're making some kind of inferences. We're filling in what's not being said here. So when I first read this line, I instantly suspected that someone was dying or getting closer to death, and that this was some kind of a goodbye. Here's more of that opening. I began. I told her insects fly through rain, missing every drop, never getting wet. I told her no one in America owned a tape recorder before Bing Crosby did. I told her the shape of the moon is like a banana. You see it looking full, you're seeing it end on. The camera made me self-conscious and I stopped. It was trained on us from a ceiling mount, the kind of camera banks use to photograph robbers. It played us to the nurses down the hall in intensive care. Go on, girl, she said. You get used to it. So the opening dialogue is mysterious. We don't know who's speaking, but we do start to make some inferences. We enter in the middle of something and there's a gradual unfolding of what's happening. So it's coming more into focus. This is a great way to use in medias res. So it's like we've entered a room where a conversation is already underway and we're walking in the middle of that conversation and the missing pieces start to slowly fill in. We don't immediately know where we are or who we're listening to, and we read to fill in those missing pieces. So by the end of this particular passage, we know we're in the hospital, we know we're in intensive care, and we're starting to get the sense that this might be one of the final conversations these two women or girls, we're not sure yet of their age, this will be one of the final conversations that they have. So this is going to be a difficult goodbye. That's the sense we get. But it's doled out slowly, and we're given hints about what might be happening. We start to make our own assumptions about what we're witnessing, and we read to see if our inferences are right. And we're already feeling concern. It's a very effective opening. Okay, hook number 3. A relatable human experience. This is from Peter Cameron's young adult novel, Someday This Pain Will Be Useful to You. Here's the opening line. The day my sister Jillian decided to pronounce her name with a hard G was coincidentally the same day my mother returned early and alone from her honeymoon. I love this first sentence. Now, it is a summary. It's a summary of that day, but the details give life to the summary. But more important, it draws us into these characters' lives instantly. It's very precise. So what do we know already without being told? Well, it's a single mother household, and mom's life is probably a bit unstable. So we meet these characters in a state of imbalance. It's very, very precise, and it's very relatable. So here's how the whole opening paragraph goes. The day my sister Jillian decided to pronounce her name with a hard G was coincidentally the same day my mother returned early and alone from her honeymoon. Neither of these things surprised me. Jillian, who was between her 3rd and 4th years at Bernard, was dating a language theory professor named Rainier Maria Schultz and had consequently become a bit of a linguistic zealot, often ranting about something called pure language, of which Jillian with a hard G was supposedly an example. My mother, on the other hand, had rather rashly decided to marry an odd man named Barry Rogers. Gillian, and I had both suspected that this marriage, my mother's 3rd, would not last very long, but we assumed it would survive its honeymoon, although when we heard they were planning a honeymoon in Las Vegas, our skepticism grew. My mother, who has spent her entire life avoiding places like Las Vegas and merrily disdaining anyone who visited or even contemplated visiting such places, had announced in a disturbing, brainwashy way that a honeymoon in Las Vegas would be fun and a nice change from her previous honeymoons, Italy with my father and Galapagos Islands with her second husband. Whenever my mother said anything was or would be fun, you could take it as a warning that said thing was not nor would be fun at all. And when I reminded my mother of this, I used the example of her telling me that the sailing camp she had forced me to attend the summer I was 12 would be fun. She admitted that sailing camp had not been fun for me, but that was no reason why a honeymoon in Las Vegas would not be fun for her. Such is the ability of adults, well, my mother at least, have to deceive themselves. It's a great opening. So he drives home the point of what he's just said. And there's this mistrust of the adults in his life. So he sets the stage by giving us a snapshot in very vivid, precise detail of his family dynamics. Now, even if we're parents ourselves, we can relate to that moment in our development when we start to see the flaws in our parents and we start to mistrust what they have to say. So in the opening paragraph, he's already challenging his mother's logic. So we can expect this friction will only escalate and that he's going to resist or defy the expectations that adults around him have set for him. So it's a coming of age story. It's a fresh, engaging narrator and a human experience we can relate to. On to hook number 4, a clash of ideas. Here's an example from John Cheever's story, The Angel of the Bridge. You may have seen my mother waltzing on ice skates in Rockefeller Center. She's 78 years old now, but very wiry, and she wears a red velvet costume with a short skirt. Her tights are flesh-colored, and she wears spectacles and a red ribbon in her white hair. And she waltzes with one of the rink attendants. I don't know why I should find the fact that she waltzes on ice skates so disconcerting, but I do. I avoid the neighborhood whenever I can during the winter months, and I never lunch in the restaurants on the rink. Once, when I was passing that way, a total stranger took me by the arm and pointing to Mother said, "Look at that crazy old dame." I was very embarrassed. I suppose I should be grateful for the fact that she amuses herself and is not a burden to me. But I sincerely wish she had hit on some less conspicuous recreation. Whenever I see gracious old ladies arranging chrysanthemums and pouring tea, I think of my own mother, dressed like a hat check girl, pushing some paid rink attendant around the ice in the middle of the third biggest city of the world. So why I love this beginning is because it thwarts our expectations. It throws us off, just like it throws off the narrator. We don't usually envision a 78-year-old mother waltzing on ice skates, scantily dressed in the very public arena of Rockefeller Center in New York City. So it reels us in. It's surprising. It's not what we'd expect. It's also a relatable human experience. Here's another great example from M.T. Anderson's young adult dystopian novel, Feed. We went to the moon to have fun, but the moon turned out to completely suck. So I love this first sentence because, well, first of all, the moon. And then he tells us that it sucks, which is something we would never expect. So sure, went to the moon is one thing, but we don't expect it to suck. We expect it to be kind of exciting and adventurous. So here's how he continues. We went on a Friday because there was shit all to do at home. It was the beginning of spring break. Everything at home was boring. Link Art Walker was like, "I'm so null." And Marty was all, "I'm null too, unit." But I mean, we were all pretty null because for the last hour, we'd been playing with 3 uninsulated wires that were coming out of the wall. We were trying to ride shocks off them. So Marty told us that there was this fun place for low grav on the moon. Low grav can be kind of stupid, but this was supposed to be good. It was called the Ricochet Lounge. We thought we'd go for a few days with some of the girls and stay at a hotel there and go dancing. So this immediately captures us because we're thrown off balance. We went to the moon. So we're not sure exactly what is happening here. There's some lingo we're not familiar with. And so it's a little disorienting in a good way. And the idea of going to the moon is way outside our own reality, but the voice of the narrator and the exchange between him and his friends is very familiar. So we have the boredom, and then we have the seeking of excitement. It's the way they talk about this trip to the moon. It's just as casual as though they're talking about spending spring break at Miami Beach. And what I love about this opening is the voice of the narrator. So there's a clash of ideas. Okay, so let's recap. Your opening paragraph is often your only chance to capture your reader's attention. So to get the greatest payoff, here are 4 ways to start the engine of your story and keep your reader reeled in. Number 1, a defining event. This is especially effective when your story centers around a trauma. Number 2, dialogue. This is a great way to start in the middle of something. Number 3, convey a human experience, something that's relatable. And number 4, a clash of ideas. Surprise us, throw us off balance. So there you have it. I hope this episode gives you some ideas and inspiration for crafting your own story openings so that you can capture your reader's attention and have them wanting more. Now, if you know any writers who could benefit from this episode, please share it. Either drop the link into Facebook or Twitter. I'd be so grateful. My goal with this podcast is to help as many writers as I can find new ways into their stories. And if you love what you're listening to, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and leave me a review. I read all of your comments, and I feel so fortunate to get to spend this time with you every week. It really is an honor to be part of your journey. I'll see you next week, same time, same place, with a brand new episode. Till then, keep writing, and I'll talk to you soon.